is Terry Bradshaw, quarterback, Pittsburgh Steelers.
It's 7:15. There's a new home run champion of all time, and it's Henry Aaron.
This is baseball, Major League Baseball. And this is
ABC's Monday Night Baseball, live from Fenway Park in Boston, Massachusetts.
Looking. He's under the gun. He's fired. He throws. It is.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Past Our Prime podcast. Here we go, doing it again. I'm your host, Scott Johnston, joined as always by my two buddies and my two other hosts, colleagues, longtime friends. Am I forgetting anything? Inmates.
My name's not Buddy, so I don't know
Idols.
what you get.
Huh?
Idols.
Idols?
Yes, very
well,
good. Yes.
Singular.
Singular.
Yeah.
Gods?
Yes.
Yes.
Bill Hoffman and Mark Hoff. Did I say Bill Hoffman again?
You said
You
Bill
did.
McHoffman.
McHoffman. Bill Hoffman.
What is wrong with me?
I don't.
That's a combination
I
of Bill
love it.
McDonald and Bill Mahoney and Mark
Golly.
Mark
Hoffman.
Hoffman. That's right.
I've known him for 35 years.
Yep.
I don't get that at all.
You can call me
Bill
whatever you
Mahoney.
want.
Yay!
Yay!
You can call him
And-
whatever you want. Just
Yeah.
don't call him late for dinner.
Exactly.
Mark
Thank
Hoffman.
you.
So,
Yeah.
just as a refresher, we take a look back at sports from 50 years ago when I was 5, Bill was 9, and Mark was 43.
45.
And we do it by looking at old issues of Sports Illustrated. Started this back in January. This is our 16th episode. So go back and download any of the others that you may have missed. They're timeless, obviously, because we're talking about stuff that happened 50 years ago.
You also added a place they can find the episodes now.
That is a good point. Yes. Where is that?
It's on YouTube.
Yes.
Past Our Prime podcast on YouTube. So if there's an episode, you can watch it all. And I'm doing my best, or we're all doing our best to put little clips up there. So there's fun little clips as well. And
Yeah.
please leave a comment if you like.
So this is our Sweet 16 then, right now.
That is correct.
It is.
All right.
Yes. Yeah, leave us a
Quinceañera.
nice review if you don't mind on iTunes, YouTube, any of that kind of stuff always helps. And like I said, a nice review. Don't say anything mean about Mark. That's
Because everybody else
you don't
does.
need to. Okay.
I tell you what, though, on TikTok, Mark's Festus stuff just blew up.
But you see, that's
They
the
loved it.
problem.
Yeah,
It's
but I'm
not
saying-
Festus. That
I
was
know.
not a cowboy outfit.
I know, but it was just, they loved it.
Right.
The
And-
fans loved it. They
and
loved
that
it,
wasn't
you know.
a picture of Festus. That was a
I
picture of
changed the
Ken-
picture.
Oh, you did?
I
Okay,
did. I
all
changed the
right.
picture. Now he looks like he's got the gruff beard. And yeah.
Don't get me story. I'll give you some Gunsmoke
Yeah,
trivia.
I
I'll
tell you,
knock your
people
socks
love
off.
that. People love the Mark Festus angle that we're going with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My daughter got me for my birthday. Don't bother me now. I'm watching Gunsmoke socks.
It's just-
So,
See?
At least you're not dating yourself. See,
Nice.
exactly, Festus. I mean, now come
yeah,
on.
and all her friends go Gunsmoke. What the heck is that?
It's a good show.
Before we get going, some news today, and when we were recording this on the death of O.J. Simpson, who all three of us grew up watching, and there was quite a turn of events in his life back in, what was it, June of 94?
Yeah.
June of '94.
The chase.
I was driving into work Monday morning, and Mike Tyson had a comeback fight. Ryan Sandberg had retired. I was going to produce the sports show, and I get in there, and then everybody's all huddled up, and the news director says, "Oh man, get all to the gym because OJ's house is surrounded, and he's a suspect in his ex-wife's murder." And I'm like, "What the?"
Yeah.
And it just blew away. And the other thing was, when the murder happened, I lived in Brentwood.
You did?
I lived 2 to 3 blocks away from the murder site. And let me tell you, it was nuts. Satellite trucks in the area. I mean, for about a week, it was nonstop craziness.
I remember you were the one that actually told me. I was doing the World Cup. I was down interviewing the players for the
that's
World
right.
Cup. And Mark called me up and said, that OJ story. What happened? He goes, he murdered his wife and a friend. I was stunned. I mean, shocked just because of the fact that Nicole Brown, I went to high school with her sister Minnie Brown in Dana Hills, and OJ was a big part of that culture in terms of people who used to go over to Laguna Niguel or Monarch Bay and have parties, and people I knew him. I never met him, but I'm still stunned.
People who are 35, 40, or younger have no idea that OJ was this beloved figure for so long.
Not just in football.
Exactly.
Right. The Hertz commercials.
Naked
jumping
Gun.
over. Naked Gun movies. The Hertz commercial with the grandma going, go,
Arnold
go.
Palmer. Yeah.
Towering Inferno.
That's right. That's good call, Scott. Yeah.
He was a beloved figure, so this was quite a shock. And
I believe did a little bit of Monday Night Football.
He did.
He was a broadcaster. He was everywhere.
He was when he went someplace, his smile and personality lit up a room. So you didn't see him as a football player anymore. You saw him as, oh, that's OJ, that's the juice, and everyone looked up to him.
And he played that role
Yes.
or that persona, but there was obviously a different side to him that, I don't know, maybe back then, domestic abuse, I don't know, as a culture, we just were kind of like, what?
Turned a
What
blind eye
happened,
to it.
Yeah.
Because it was, when the murders happened, it wasn't the first time that he had been violent towards Nicole.
Yes. Did you today on YouTube? I was listening to an interview when he talked about the hypothetical. Hypothetically, what happened with the killer? He basically forgets the hypothetical in most of it and just starts describing
what happened.
And I'm thinking, you're telling us what you did, and it's just it is
obviously
disgustingly mind blowing.
No, but odds are that he did it. But I only interviewed OJ one time, and it was nothing football related. He was with Marcus Allen and a bunch of other athletes, and they were supporting the U.S. soccer team. It was something they were singing, recording the song. So I'm doing the interview with him, and I did one with Marcus. But I remember maybe it was in between interviews or something. OJ snapped at Marcus and said, "We got to get going." And my initial reaction was, "Wow, that's quite a temper." And I'm not saying he did it, he didn't do it. You can make your own opinions about that. But that's the only time I interviewed him, and he was great during the interview. But in between the interview, we had that little moment where...
Well, I'm saying he did it.
Yeah, but don't remember, and we're not going to mention the guy, but wasn't there a person we're all familiar with when OJ was acquitted, that our one friend was walking by his house and OJ was outside?
Oh, yes.
And he stopped by and he went, guilty, guilty, guilty,
yeah.
and kept going.
I texted with him this morning. One of the all-time greats.
Yeah. That the guy we're talking about has no filter with that.
Yes.
Just
Great
great guy.
That
great
is
guy.
hilarious. But yeah, it was just surreal. And then, a year later, him, not being found guilty. But I mean, the other thing was, it wasn't just this news that broke on a Monday morning that he was a suspect in an investigation, because he had flown to Chicago to do something for Hertz.
That's right.
And then came back. But it was that Thursday or Friday when he was supposed to turn himself in and didn't.
Right.
And then you had the slow speed chase.
During the NBA Finals, too.
Right.
Yeah.
And I remember the way he was going on the 450. He was going back to Brentwood because, like I say, I lived at it. I knew the direction he was going. But it was surreal that it was the Knicks and Rockets in the NBA Finals. And the OJ thing was so big that they would have, they kind of blew up they'd set up the screen so you could watch the NBA game in a little box and the chase in another box. So the NBA
slow speed chase.
Yeah,
And the chase was
so
bigger.
unimportant there that more people cared about the chase than the NBA game.
And it went on for so long that, at the beginning, it was just Al driving, Al Cowlings,
Yeah.
and OJ supposedly going to kill himself.
Yeah.
And within 10, 20 minutes, he'd go under an underpass, and there were all these people.
With signs and go juice.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was just ridiculous.
And that's where I feel bad, because his family now has to relive that. The Browns and the Goldmans have to relive it today, because people are going to be going, so what do you,
I know.
That's
I
not
was
fair.
wondering.
Yeah, it's not fair to them.
I texted that man that you said earlier,
Yeah.
friend of ours, and Tommy.
Yeah.
And,
The T-Man.
I said, I hope it's a good day for Fred Goldman.
I do
Yeah.
too. Yeah.
If you look at all the highlights, I remember with the Bills, because the 73 season, because we're looking back at 74. And 73 was when he set the rushing record. I believe he went over 2,000 yards. and you'd watch highlights of him, and it would take him 2 steps to go 5 yards.
Yeah, that's
Just
what,
on a
remember
stride.
that's what Bob Chandler used to say, that he would jump into the hole real quick, but before he even landed, he was already moving in a different direction. That he was that powerful.
Yep. I won't say he'll be missed. You know,
No.
he had everything, and he pissed it away, and he murdered 2. You know, I'm not saying at all that Nicole wasn't a victim, and she was no question, and his children, but Ron Goldman
Did nothing.
just returning
Glasses.
sunglasses,
Yeah.
and just,
After his shift.
right,
Yeah, wrong place.
Worked all day.
And it's funny because I lived in 3 different places in Broward. You could trace the whole murders by the 3 places. I lived in a street that Goldman lived on. I then lived, right around the corner from Nicole. Then I lived 2 blocks away from there. So you could trace the whole case. I call it the Brentwood Triangle.
Yes.
All right, getting back to present day 1974 stuff. This issue has the one of golfers' all-time greats on the cover, Gary Player of South Africa. But before we get to that, let's get out our scorecard, shall we?
Mm-hmm.
And I think I'm going to start with Henry Aaron. The watch is finally over. We had talked a few times about why the schedule made it to where he would open up the season in Cincinnati just 1 home run away, and how we were like, well, that would never happen today. Now they would make sure that they would open in Atlanta. But as it turns out, that was the case back then. According to the schedule maker, they made the schedule the year before because Henry was 25 home runs or so away. And then Henry had a really big second half and ends the year 1 home run away from tying the record. But the schedule had already been made. But the schedule guy said, if Major League Baseball or the Braves, either one of them had come to me and said, we need to fix this, we need to make sure, he would have done it. And neither one reached out. Isn't that's insane? I mean, like, it's not out of the realm of possibility that Henry hits 2 opening day. He hits 1, he ties it in Cincinnati, and then, I mean, I gotta think that there's part of people on he doesn't play game 2, game 3, he doesn't hit a home run, but they're probably rooting that he doesn't hit a home run.
And all they had to do was make a phone call.
Just
change
make one phone
Yeah,
call.
make it a 6-game homestand for the Braves at the beginning of the year, and you never have to deal with this. Yeah, man,
But
one
I mean,
phone call.
the baseball gods smiled on him, and it
They
all
did.
worked out. I thought it was interesting, though, in that same thing when they're talking about Aaron, he had Sparky Anderson, though, talking about how the baseball season, first of all, starts too early. Well, what do you think about today when it starts in March?
28th, yeah.
Right, and that they shouldn't be playing in cold weather cities. Well, yeah, look at all the rainouts we're having.
Another few today.
Right. He was prophetic, but, as bad as he thought it was in 1974, it's nothing. Who would think baseball starts in March? Baseball used to start like April 15th or 16th at one time.
Yeah, there was points where when we did spring training, we would leave 1st of April.
Yeah.
Now we're out of there
a
at
couple days
25th,
in.
24th,
I know.
24th of March. Yeah.
The other thing I found interesting was the World Team Tennis one, and people forget there was this league, World Team Tennis. It started, and I always remember the Los Angeles Strings. That was the LA team. I remember John Black, before he became the PR director for the Lakers, was doing PR for the Strings. I remember that.
Really?
Yeah.
Did not know that.
Yeah. But I just don't know. There's so much team sports. The thought of going to watch it. To me, tennis, doubles is not as popular as singles, obviously. It's an individual sport to me. And the team concept, I don't know. Just to me, it doesn't really work.
Doubles used to be fun to watch.
And wasn't Jeannie Buss the head of the?
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, she was.
that right?
Yeah, her father put her in charge of that. Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. At least that's what I read.
My dad put me in charge of raking the leaves.
And I got trash. Trash and dusting, and no money. I was gonna say, just the one I have is the since it's a Gary Player episode, the Fred Piper. He was a traffic cop and a huge golfer. Fred Piper likes to play golf. He's a huge golfer, and when he owes things, he pays. In this case, he names his children after golfers.
Yeah.
So he has Freddie Haas, Piper, now 30, Johnny DeMarco, Bobby Jones, Dick Meyer, Arnold Palmer, and Carol Mann. He did have one child named Susan. She was supposed to be Babe Didrikson, but the priest objected, because Piper said, because he said the name might affect her when she grows up. How do you do that? You know?
No Tiger, huh? It was too early.
Exactly, a little bit,
Yeah.
just a little bit.
Did you say there was a Sam Snead?
No,
No,
there actually
no.
did I? Let me see. Let me look.
No.
No, I didn't. I did. I didn't get it. You're right. Carol Mann, Mickey Wright, and Sam Snead.
Okay.
Yeah, you're
Can
absolutely
you
right. Yeah.
Imagine.
Yeah.
That's what
Also,
you
Patty Berg, Ben Hogan, and Betsy
That's what
were
you
also.
name a boat.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
Your child. Strange.
Now, speaking of golf, though, and they said it, I like Clifford Roberts, who's the chair
good one.
of the Masters, asked what would be two if a streaker streaked at the Masters. Because remember, we've been talking about 1974 was the year of the streaker. You know, it was big, fat.
Yes, it ended 50 years ago for most people, Mark. You
Yeah.
can stop now.
Oh,
Mark's-
come on. Hey,
I mean-
Will Ferrell.
Jeremy,
you know, come on.
Jeremy and I
Old
have talked
school.
about this.
Yeah.
Mark's got to start wearing clothes in here. It's just
Right?
disgusting.
You would think it would be
I
a
need
policy.
to breathe.
I
I
mean,
need to breathe.
Jeremy and I are disgusted. We're not taking this anymore.
So Clifford Roberts said, why, asked, well, what do you do if a streaker streaked at the Masters? Why, naturally, I would take away his badge. But then if you take away his badge, he's got nothing covering him up.
Honestly,
Leave the badge on.
You
You know?
got to ID him.
That's nuts. That's pure nuts.
I liked Gibby Gilbert, who said, unimpressed by the power of the stars over pro golfers. If there's anything to this astrology business, Jack Nicklaus must have been born under every sign. That's 'cause
right.
He was doing pretty well back then. It didn't matter if it was May or when he was born.
But that's the thing I miss. I look back. I didn't really pay attention to golf when I was growing up. I wish at that time I would have to see Nicklaus and to see Palmer, maybe not right in their heyday, but in the time they were so good, because now we've seen all of Tigers. But when I was a kid, I just said, golf, give me
Right.
baseball.
Yeah, no,
You
I
know?
was the same way. Same way. And I still, like some people watch like all 4 rounds of every tournament,
Yes.
let alone the Masters. And I'm not to that point yet.
I usually
you know,
watch the final
on
round.
Sunday.
Yeah,
if it's
yeah.
if it's tight and
Yeah.
there's some people in there, then I will. So.
I found that when we produce shows, I watched a lot more golf. Like, because you have to watch it.
Right.
So
Yeah.
at the end of a weekend, I go, oh, I know everything that went on. Now, when you don't do it as much, I don't watch as much.
I was really good at cutting golf, even though I was not a golf fan. I was really good at doing golf highlights. I just don't know why.
Golf highlights are hard to cut because you very rarely show approach shots. Or
But see, that's what I learned.
Sorry.
They're more important.
I know, but they take forever.
Right. They do. But what you do is you go, and there's the approach on 9. It lands on the green. It rolls. It won't stop till about 10 feet from the
Right.
cup. That set up a birdie and put so-and-so at 10 under par with a 1-shot lead. It's amazing how you can write and cover that. Because I remember one highlight where someone was just showing putt tap-ins. I'm going, really? No.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I was just thinking of a guy I knew. With
used
the
to cut
and that same guy with the OJ.
Tommy again.
Yeah, the golfer he does a tee shot, and he just let it go for like 50 seconds. The guy's just walking. And I can remember Tom going, Bill, what's going on? And you know how when they usually tap in the shot, you just let him tap it and then you move to the next one.
Nope.
He let the guy walk up to the hole, take the ball out, and keep walking. And Tom was like, "Who's cutting these highlights?"
It's like
Just
a minute 15.
Yeah, it was like on one
for
play
an 8-second shot.
So you're talking about it. I'm just thinking, yeah, it's not hard to cut golf.
You should only have a tap in if
Yes.
it's the 18th hole
Yes.
to end the thing.
Right.
Yeah.
He's just won the Masters. or
Not
something
on the
like that.
fourth hole.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. That takes us up
Sorry.
to cutting highlights of golf from 50 years ago. We would have been cutting Gary Player, and we would have been cutting his 3rd round. I think that was the one that basically got him back into contention, and then he won it on Sunday. Jack Nicklaus was focused on beating all the young guys that were coming into the Masters, but it turned out it was Gary Player, who had surgery in 1973, but said he was playing the best golf of my life. And on Saturday, he shot a 666. And on the on the 18th hole of the final round, he took the lead, never looked back. No, that can't be right.
No.
I have the 98th hole, but that can't be right either.
Yeah. I know on that Saturday
Hey,
he
he
had 5
won
straight
the-
birdies.
I've got it. I was saying in the first round in the Masters, he wasn't in the top 15. The second round, he wasn't in the top 10. In the third round, he was tied for second. Final round, finished -10.
You know, the most amazing thing about Gary Player is from 1957 to 2009, there were 53 Masters. He played in 52 of those 53 Masters. The only one he missed, 73, the year before he won it.
Surgery?
Right, the surgery one, which is incredible.
I also want to point out, we tried. Scott, you worked hard to try to get Gary Player on this episode.
Yeah.
So when people say, that's the cover, why isn't he here?
Yeah.
You worked hard on that.
Yeah, they contacted us
Yeah,
or
you
got back
chased,
to us.
you chased him down.
Yeah. But he said he's flying in from South Africa. They say he is probably has flown more miles than any athlete
I bet.
of all time. And one place I read said he may have flown more miles than anyone all time. More miles than anyone.
Even
he's
Neil
been flying-
Armstrong?
I don't know if space counts.
I'm kidding.
But, if you're coming from South Africa a few times a year, you're making the rounds. Johnny Miller was hoping to win the Masters for the first time in his career, but he finished a disappointing 15th as player. Landed atop the leaderboard, the first coming 13 years earlier in 61. I knew I was going to win on the first tee. It's the best golf I've ever played in a major championship all the way, said the South African Hall of Fame golfer Gary Player. Mark?
I thought it was really fascinating, and one of his great attributes, he had nicknames. I think one was the Black Knight. The other one was Mr. Fitness. And you're wondering, what does that mean? He was always in such great shape, which is why he played golf for so long. And, he won the 3 Masters. He won 9 majors, both on the PGA Tour and on the Champions Tour. But it was his fitness that really kept him there. And the most amazing thing to me was in 2013, I think he was 77 years old. He posed nude in the ESPN magazine body issue.
Another you and your streaking
another
again.
naked thing.
My goodness, we're gonna need to make this like R-rated or something.
I
You
I
can't
give you
stop.
the naked truth, the bare facts. That is me.
Please.
I just think, I look back, they said 1984, at the age of 48, he became the oldest ever major champion, or he finished second place behind Lee Trevino in the PGA Championship. I think the oldest player to actually get that close. I mean, he's, And
I just want to find the ESPN magazine because I didn't know they did like nudie issues. But
I mean,
I'm sure it was tastefully done,
it-
and it didn't show anything. It was just,
No,
Do
it's
you
just
Mark?
him hanging all out, Mark.
Yeah, just hanging there going.
Mark goes up to him, can you sign this, please? Right there.
Oh man,
My name's Mark Schlong, please.
he was a player.
But hey, come on. And he still had, we all know Player is he's the oldest golfer to ever make the cut. So he broke Sam Snead's record. And isn't that what Tiger Woods is trying to do this year at the Masters? Become the oldest? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, there was some controversy with him.
Tiger Woods never been naked.
In 1966, he did like an interview with some reporter where he kind of supported apartheid, which was, being South African and stuff, which was he took a lot of flack for that. Now, if he'd have done that today,
he'd be done.
He couldn't continue, but for whatever reason, he continued. And I don't know if his stance changed or
It
not.
did change. I mean, I don't know if his stance changed. I think he claimed that he was taken out of context and that he never supported it. And then he definitely came out against it once everyone else did as well. So,
Right.
All right, let's go on to hockey, shall we? Bill?
No, I just was liking the fact that obviously you've watched hockey. Guys that sit in that slot, they get whacked. They're talking about Phil Esposito.
Right.
They say it's a 5 by 10 foot zone in front of the goaltender. He's there for more than a second. He fully expects to step the bull end of an opponent's stick with his stomach, catch a few fists in his face, get stick whipped around his ankles, or be held, bumped, elbowed, and shouldered. I mean, and the fact that he's still, and they said he did it all the time, just would stand in that net and just take hits.
Yeah.
And he scored 68 goals that year.
I mean, I'm looking at the picture that they have in the magazine
Yeah.
issue, and he's got his arm up, and that series they beat the Maple Leafs like they swept them 4 straight. But you look at him, there's no helmet on, there's no face guard. It's just him there, taking those shots.
6'2", 215, and just a block.
Yep.
The defenseman for Toronto,
That-
Brian Glennie, says sometimes he doesn't even budge when he gets hit. So yeah, it had to be a horrible thing for the defense to see. Oh, there's Esposito, right where he wants to be. You go move him.
And then he kept saying he wants more penalties on the defenseman because he's getting hit, and them thinking, what is a defenseman to do? I mean, there's got to be some, I'm not saying they need to whack him in the face, but that,
Yeah, they took him out of game one. Their strategy worked. They lost, but Boston won 1-0. Esposito said, Bobby Hull always told me that the worst thing about hockey is that the rules can be stretched so that the pests can make life miserable for the better players. What if Bobby Orr got racked up? Say two guys deliberately went after him every game and kept pounding him into the boards. Bobby doesn't need that. He'd probably quit, and then hockey would be the great loser. So he's basically advocating that the stars get preferential treatment, which has basically been happening since the dawn of sports time. But he also is like saying, all right, maybe you stop me tonight, but I'm going to go public with my complaints today and see if that works on the refs for the next game. And eventually, refs are human too. They're gonna at some point, cave and it'll even out. I think.
But they're also aware who puts people in seats.
Yeah.
You take Phil Esposito out and keep him on the bench because of some minor penalty. The fans are going to get upset, which means they're going to could possibly lose money. So it's eventually come back around. You want Esposito on the ice all the time.
Yeah.
But no, I was thinking that the Toronto's one of those teams that, desperate to win a Stanley Cup. They live and die hockey there. They must hate the Bruins. The Bruins have won the last 6 playoff series that they've played from 69, 72, 74, 13, 18, and 19. And I think if I looked right, it's looking like in their Boston-Toronto first round.
Yeah.
So they just can't get away from them, man.
Moving on to the NBA playoffs. From the Stanley Cup to the NBA, it was death in the afternoon. But not for the Bulls of Chicago. After years of trying to get past the first round of the playoffs, they finally made it. Led by a most unlikely hero who would have been wearing another team's uniform by Peter Carey. Pistons and Bulls in Game 7 of the Western Conference. Neither team had much playoff success to lean on. In fact, Detroit coach Ray Scott talked about playing the Elgin Baylor, Jerry West-led Lakers in the early 60s and thinking, hey, we got a chance to beat these guys. But in Game 6, they're down 3-2, and he knew it was over before the game started. Why? And he said, you know how we knew it was the final game? When some of the older guys, Don Old, Bailey Howell, Jackie Moreland, showed up with trailers already hitched to their cars for the move home for the summer. So that's like, how Barkley and those guys will all do the gone fishing thing on the TNT. Yeah. That goes back apparently 60 years because the vets of the Pistons knew they were done. And you're right. Clifford Ray had the big game that in Game 7 that he basically held Bob Lanier in check.
Outplayed Lanier.
And the Bulls had a 19-point lead, hang on for a 2-point win. I think next up for them was Milwaukee.
Yeah, and I think they lost that one. But, I mean, you have to understand, so the Bulls franchise, I think I'm trying to remember they were the Zephyrs beforehand, but when they became the Bulls, they basically would always go out in the first round. They either lost to the Hawks or the Lakers in the first round, every year. So this was big just to make the second round. And little did Bulls fans realize they'd have to wait another, 17 years. But all of a sudden, first rounds mean nothing. Championships mean everything.
Yeah.
But if you look at the Bulls prior to Michael Jordan and now the Bulls after Michael Jordan, they're nothing.
Yeah. Nothing.
They're literally, you look at they're the
Cubs.
They are. It's absolutely, I mean, I just wrote down, they said they've won 5, since 1999, they've won 5 series and 12 playoff appearances. And with Michael Jordan, every year it was like you could count on either the finals or reaching
and even then, Michael had to learn how to beat the Pistons.
He did.
And the Celtics, right?
But when he did.
But once he got over the hump, then, 3 titles in a row. I mean, we talk about three-peats. Michael Jordan three-peated twice.
Mm-hmm. And we never will know. I mean, you could argue the point. Could he have won 2 more against Houston? There's no guarantee of that. But if, let's just say you did, that would have been 8 in a row.
Right.
But one thing they said about, I remember Clifford Ray more with the Warriors, but
same.
But it wasn't a real compliment. They said he's the only man when he was identified as the only man in America who looks like Anthony Quinn, Bill Cosby, and a buffalo all rolled into one. Not sure you want that. I mean,
an
for the love of
interesting,
God, man. Think I do.
I'm okay with the first two.
Yes, and then you throw in a buffalo in there. Dang.
He was a serviceable center
Yes.
in an era where the big men dominated. And so for him to hold Lanier, who was coming into his own as one of the top big men in the game, that really helped the Bulls.
And you have to remember, Chicago at that time in the 70s, you had the Cubs, you had the White Sox, you had the Bears, you had the Blackhawks. They were all more popular than the Bulls.
Yeah, and none of them very good.
Right, until
That's right. That's right.
Jordan changed all that and made the Bulls
Right.
the marquee
Yeah,
team in Chicago.
Peyton had that star power.
You did.
Not too much in the 70s that I can think of for either the White Sox or Cubs. You know, Dick
Middling.
Allen.
Yeah.
But not to that extent. Now Georgie Porgy runs away. So this is our big story of the issue. It's about Little League and little girls. And girls are suing for the right to play Little League baseball.
With the boys.
With the boys. And as we've talked about in the past, that if you're not going to let the girls play Little League baseball, you got to have something for them that's on par with it. And they did have softball leagues back then, but most of the girls who were really good, they said they could hit a home run every time up, you know, so it wasn't, the competition wasn't the same. So girls wanted to play, and we're talking Little League is up until 13 years old. Okay. So we're not talking, for the most part, a big difference in terms of physicality or that kind of stuff.
Girls developed quicker than boys at that age.
Yeah.
You know, girls were taller than boys at
right.
that age.
That's
a lot
right.
of times the boys would have that later growth spurt stuff. But you know what's really interesting is in 1950 there was a player who dressed as a boy and actually got on the team, and then they ruled that she couldn't be on the team, and they came up with this Tubby rule because the girl's name was Kathy Tubby Johnston. Any relation? Or?
I just go by Tubby Johnson.
Okay. But they had the Tubby rule came into effect so that girls couldn't play.
Yeah. Because I think Little League came to be in the 30s, and then they didn't probably think
39.
they had to write that girls couldn't play, but at some point they made it a point that they outlawed girls from playing. And so, you would have a handful of girls I read that would, do what she did, put their hair under a cap or try to look like a boy, or maybe there'd be one league, somewhere that would be like, oh, we'll let her play, but we're talking about one girl or something. But by and large, legally, they were not allowed to play. Judge George Gorman himself, a former Little League manager, ruled that Francis Pescatori, an 11-year-old shortstop, must be allowed to play. This was in New Jersey for the Ridgefield Boys Athletic Organization. The Little League, the teams there said, nope, if she plays, none of us play. So that's a really good idea. Make all the kids sit at home on Wednesdays and Saturdays.
Right. There was a politician, Assemblyman Christopher Jackman, who was sort of against the girls playing because they could get hurt in their vital areas. Well, boys have vital areas too. So that doesn't make any sense.
It's crazy. As that judge said, I don't understand what the big deal is. Why are you people so against this? The verdict opened up cases everywhere. The Little League, which represents 2 million male players in 31 countries on a tight $800,000 budget, could be emasculated financially by a plethora of court actions, win or lose. Basically, they ruled finally that Francis Pescatori and the girls could play, but it took, what they thought would be, every time they'd win a case, they would then lose a case. And it went on for years and years until finally, I believe
it went all the way up to presidents to get this done. It wasn't just they were going up the political ladder.
Involved.
Yes.
Right. They sent a letter to
Gerald
Richard
Ford
Nixon.
was one of the ones that after that signed a bill for them. I always just like when I read these articles, the arguments they have, even not just Little League and all the ones when they don't want to do something, that the one guy was at Creighton Hale said that it just wouldn't be proper for coaches to pat girls on the rear the way they naturally do boys. I've never seen that in Little League anyhow. No one tapped me on the rear when I played. And then they said, and suppose a girl does get hurt on the leg. Why, it's just not going to go over. Some grown man rubbing a little girl's leg. I've never seen that. I've never seen it in the major leagues. I've never seen a trainer come out and grab a guy by the thigh going, okay there, Mr. Burley, you're all right. Come on.
And even if that does happen,
yeah.
That's a reason for not letting them play.
Exactly.
Then have women coaches.
Exactly.
Or something if that's
umpire,
the concern.
something.
You know?
Yeah.
It's just or bring someone on from the stands. Bring the mother there.
Exactly.
She's probably going to be there. It's a made up excuse.
It's asinine.
You know, if you think about it, women have been the most prejudice in this country has been the anti-sexism has been against women. When you think about it, women weren't allowed to vote till 1920. They were saying that you don't even deserve to vote.
Right.
And it's
we refer to
mind-boggling.
those as the good old days.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, I know we joke here, but just for the listeners, there's 3 of us here, okay? Between the 3 of us, we have, there's 4 of us, but we're not counting Jeremy.
You shut this off now, Jerry.
Yes.
What?
Jeremy.
Electrocute him.
Jeremy, how many kids do you have? And is it a girl or boy? Okay, so he's the outlier. Because between the 3 of us, we have 4 girls, 0 boys. So we support women's athletics.
Yeah.
We support women's rights.
The thing is about it is you make these proclamations, and it's so true. It seems, and it's because of these kids 50 years ago.
Yes.
And our guest, Jenny Fulle, that's going to be joining us soon, that we can now look at it as like, this is crazy. It's crazy talk to even have to say that we support women's in athletics.
But remember,
when
we were little players in Little League, we wanted to win, didn't we? I wouldn't have cared if the girl next door was hitting home runs because you liked that fact after the game going, yeah, we beat you guys.
Right.
I don't get it.
Right. You know, my wife played Little League baseball.
Mm-hmm.
So that she would have been 9. That would have been 78, 79, right around there. So a couple years after this. And I know for a fact she was like probably 80% of the kids who played Little League. What snacks are we getting?
Yes.
Yeah.
What time do we get to play with everyone after the game?
Yeah.
The one
Ice
thing
cream after the
she
game?
could have
Yeah.
Mr. Otter Pops. Those were big.
I loved Otter Pops. God, I love those.
But I know that Amanda
Push-ups.
was like, she just liked being a part of it.
Yes.
Right.
She didn't really care about baseball.
Yes.
Used to have 1 practice a week too. And
Right.
That's
how
right.
you'd
That's
bond.
right.
And it would I remember going to the drugstore. I get some bubble gum and a Coke, and then show up to practice. And it was just this great feeling.
Yeah. When you're a little boy, you're uncomfortable around girls. I think if a girl's on your baseball team or something, you start feeling a little more confident around young women, and how to treat them and how to be good. And if they're better than you, even more powerful.
And I mean, if you look now, look at the NCAA basketball tournament. The women's championship got better ratings than the men's.
And it was a great game too.
And the level of play was great to enjoy there. And I've said this on this podcast numerous times before. My wife played basketball in high school, and the new gym they built was based on the success of the women's team.
Joining us now is a pioneer, if you will, a woman by the name of Jenny Fulle, who in 1972 attempted to play Little League by putting her hair up into her cap and trying to look like a boy. But her birth certificate did her in. And for the next couple of years, the games played were in courtrooms and not on playing fields. I'll let her take you through the process, but spoiler alert, in 74, I think at the age of 11 or 12, she was the first girl to ever play Little League baseball legally. There were some that slipped through the cracks there, but we were trying to get this fixed and done through the courthouses. So, Jenny, thank you so much for joining us on the Past Our Prime podcast.
Well, thanks, guys. I'm really happy to be here with you.
So let's go back 50 years to when you were just a kid and some of the arguments that you had to have heard or had to go through. Like, you could have just played softball. Why not be a good little girl and take your bat and go play with the girls? Why was it like that was not something you were willing to do?
Well, I grew up in Mill Valley, which was a much different place back in the 70s. It was a sleepy little suburb of San Francisco, and all the kids would meet up at the school ground, and we'd play games, and inevitably we would pick up games of baseball and different things. So I would play up there. And it was generally the boys I would be playing with. At school, when we would play these games and we'd play softball, because the girls played softball, of course, the girls would be out in the field and they'd be picking daisies and making daisy chains to make necklaces, and it would just make me crazy. I would be yelling, "Get the ball, get the ball," and it wasn't very satisfying. So I definitely loved baseball, and I liked the competitiveness that came with playing with the boys. So that's where I wanted to be.
So you put your hair under your cap, you go and try to fool them, if you will, and they say no. And this is and take me through what goes from there.
Yeah, so I went down and tried to pass, and as a little boy, and I didn't feel like they were asking everybody for their birth certificate, but they most definitely asked for mine. So I was very upset, and I went home and decided I was going to write a letter to the President of the United States. So I got a piece of paper and a pencil, and I started my letter to President Nixon. I think he was probably busy doing other things at that time, like trying to maybe stay out of jail. But I wrote a letter to him, and to be honest, I kind of forgot about it. I continued to play pickup ball and kind of just was resigned to the fact that I probably wouldn't get to play Little League. But about 3 months later, I got a letter. I received a letter from what was then the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare, saying that the president had asked this gentleman to respond and that they were preparing guidelines to handle this kind of discrimination. I didn't really know what to do with that. I was probably all of 10 then. But a neighborhood mom worked for the local paper, the Mill Valley Sun, and thought this would be a great story. So they did an article on it. From there, the San Francisco Examiner and Chronicle picked up on it and also did maybe front page, I don't know, I'd have to go back and look, stories on it. And from that point, the newly formed National Organization for Women in the area, under the guidance of Lee Hunt, approached us and said, "Hey, this is right up our alley. We would like to team up with you and fight this." And that's how it started.
Let me ask, you're out there playing, and obviously they're trying to keep you from playing. How did the boys treat you out on the field when you played against them?
The boys, I don't think the boys cared at all. The boys just wanted to play too, and we were young. And I was certainly, I was a big girl. Girls tend to do a lot of their growing before the young boys of that age do. So I was most definitely able to hold my own and be an asset for whatever team I played on in pickup games. So the boys didn't mind. When it finally came to be that I played, it was the parents and even leading up to the point at which I played, it was the parents that could be out quite vicious.
Was there ever a sense of frustration on your part as this thing played out over several years before you were finally allowed to play?
A lot of experiences, and one that comes to mind is we were at City Council in Mill Valley, a City Council meeting, and they were voting on it. What they were going to do as a city, because obviously Little League played on a public park, and so they voted, and the council was tied up, and the female mayor of Mill Valley, which was kind of a big deal then, Jean Bernard, voted against it and said, "Viva la différence." And even as a young child, I remember feeling shocked and a little betrayed by her at that moment.
You mentioned that you wrote the letter to President Nixon. This was after the president of the Little League basically said no chance. So you go to the go to the next president.
That's right. And the only other president I could think of.
Yes. And like you said, we don't know if it got in front of him, but it got in front of someone. What was it like when you looked in the mailbox that one day and you are like, "Oh my gosh, I got a response"? Were you?
Well, I don't have a vivid memory of that, but it seems like I must have run around to all my neighbors and all of my friends showing them, and that's how my friend's mom found out about it. I'm sure that it was, I don't think that I could understand the significance of it at that point in my life, but the fact that it said the president asked him to respond, I believed that. So I believe the president now knew who I was, and maybe I had a chance to play Little League.
Mark asked real quickly the frustrations you were going through, but you're just a little kid. You're 11 or 12 years old. How were you handling that?
That part of it was okay. I feel like the adults that were active, like NOW, and we had an ACLU lawyer that worked with us, and they shepherded me, and they would have me speak at times and not have me speak at times. That was all fine. It became more difficult when, excuse me, I feel like I became kind of a minor celebrity in our little town. And at a certain point, when you're at that age, you kind of sometimes just want to fade into the background. You don't want news cameras showing up at school and pulling you out. And it wasn't frustrating, but that was something at an awkward time in a young person's life. It wasn't really the attention I wanted all the time.
Where did that drive come from? A lot of kids that are 10 years old, the last thing they want to do when they're told no to something is to go home and write a letter. You went home and wrote the president. Where did that come from? Where did you get that ability to do that at 10?
I think that where we all have different innate abilities, and I think that I was kind of born with that determination, and especially it's a sense of fairness too, and it just didn't seem fair. I was as good as any of the boys. I wanted to play, and it made no sense to me that I couldn't. So I wasn't always as good with no as I should have been, perhaps. And I'm not referring to Little League necessarily, but throughout my life.
So you wrote the letter to the president. I think that was early in '73. And then in '74, the rulings start to come down that say girls can play. But is it true you didn't actually get on the field till 1975 to play your first game?
No, the way that it happened was we were in court. There was, I think, 5 cases in the United States going on in 73, 74. And there was 5 different, in different parts of the country, 5 different girls fighting to play. And it almost bankrupted Little League. So Little League had to pick one particular case to take to state Supreme Court and take it all the way. They chose the most conservative area, which was New Jersey at the time. And I forget the girl's name was Maria something or other. So while her case was being heard by the state Supreme Court, ours went to Superior Court in Marin County. And the judge said, this is this girl's last year of eligibility, referring to me. Either you let her play this year or you cannot use public facilities. And I don't know if that was a statewide ruling or what, but it did have a wide-reaching effect if Little League were to say no. So they let me, the next day I was out on the field practicing with the team. And so I was the only girl to play that year. And then, of course, Little League lost that same year. So the following year, it was opened up to all girls.
So did you play then 2 years for Little League or just that 1 year?
No, it was my last year of eligibility, the year that I played.
And I thought there was a story that said like your first practice, they actually threw at your head. Is that true?
I don't know. They put me on minor leagues because they didn't open it up to me until after tryouts. And if you didn't try out in Little League, you automatically went to minors. I didn't probably belong on the minor leagues. I don't think a 9-10-year-old boy in minor leagues can actually aim for somebody's head. Did a ball almost hit me in the head? Yes, but I don't think that the pitcher was that good, to be honest.
You had to be,
but it made a better headline.
It sure does.
Yeah, Jenny, you had to be nervous though that you knew that your time was running out. That the age limit is 13, and so you're not saying, "Oh, okay, they ruled in my favor. I'll do this next year." Like, there was some expediency that needed to take place in order to get you on the field. Were you nervous?
No, I wasn't. Today I would be if I were in that sort of situation, but back then I wasn't nervous. I just wanted to play. And I went out to practice and they put me up at bat and I started hitting the ball. And one of the reporters asked the coach, what position is she going to play? And he said, right now she's going to play batter. Because I just kept hitting them over their heads. So I wasn't nervous. I was nervous the opening day game. But after that, it was all fine.
So how would you describe you as a player? You just said you're a batter, but how would you describe yourself as a Little League player?
I think that I think I was a great player. I loved Little League. That was one of the, that's one of my fondest memories is getting to play baseball that year. They put me on first base because I was so much taller than everybody else. And I batted fourth all year. Every time I'd get up to bat, if you turned in the home run ball, you got a free hot dog. So every time I would get up to bat, kids would go behind the fence and hope that I was going to hit it over.
I would have been one of them.
And I led the league in home runs that year.
Oh.
The coaches must have loved you then.
Yeah. The boys had no problem. One of them was quoted as they were interviewed, some of my teammates, and how do you feel about having a girl on your team? And one of them said, "Oh, well, but she's fine. We thought we were going to get some crappy girl, but she's okay." So
the crappy,
nobody cared. It was baseball.
My wife played a few years later, so that's when the crappy girls started showing up.
I see.
Did you ever, as nowadays, when you watch little girls play in the Little League, like the Little League World Series, like Monet Davis, does that bring you back? And how proud are you when you see girls out there now?
I definitely feel a sense of pride. I mean, it was bound to happen. And there was, as I said, there was a lot of different battles being waged around that time. But it definitely is a sense of pride for me. It was something that I wanted to not really deal with very much as I was going through my teens. But as I got older and my awkward teens ended, I've become very proud of it over the years. I actually just had an opportunity. I was traveling down the East Coast, and a friend of mine lives in Boston, and I was going to stop by and visit with her. And she somehow arranged it. She got in touch with the Red Sox organization and told them who I was and sent them some information on me. And next thing I know, they're inviting me to come throw out the first pitch for a game. And they had a jersey with my name on it. And I'm very proud of what happened 50 years ago, and that it's still remembered in some ways today.
Right when this was all happening, or about a year or two afterwards, the movie Bad News Bears comes out, where they have the female pitcher, the Tatum O'Neal character, who's the best player, the best pitcher on the team. Do you think a lot of that came from what you and the other girls did to fight to get girls to be allowed to play?
Well, it's funny you say that. I worked in the film industry as an adult for my career, and I had an opportunity to work with Michael Ritchie on a movie, who directed Bad News Bears. Yeah. And so I was talking to him about my story, and he said, "Oh, I remember that we were getting newspaper clippings and changing the script and writing the script." And so, yes, it definitely had a little something to do with that.
That's awesome. You mentioned this, or you brought it up somewhat already, but it's amazing that you could still enjoy yourself, because they were trying to take the fun out of all of it. But really, when it came down to it, was it all worth it? And I don't mean in terms of how it turned out, but like as a 12-year-old, was your day-to-day life impacted in any negative way, or were you able to just put it aside?
I think I was able to put it aside. Like I said, getting to play that 1 year of Little League is one of my fondest memories. The kids didn't care. The coaches didn't care. It was about the baseball. As I mentioned before, opening day was a little stressful, and I was a little nervous because the park was filled with reporters and jeering parents and people who probably had absolutely nothing to do with Mill Valley Little League at the time. But that had something to say about the first girl playing. So that was, if every game had been like that, it would not have been enjoyable, but it wasn't. It was just the first one.
You mentioned that you worked in the industry as a visual effects producer. In all your years, have you watched any kind of film or product that emphasized women in sports, or that promoted the cause that you said this was really a nicely done project?
I'm not going to be able to answer that very quickly. Put on the spot.
I'll throw out like a League of Their Own or something like along those lines.
Of course. Actually, thank you. I appreciate that. When I saw that movie was being produced, I reached out to Penny Marshall and her producer and I sent them newspaper clippings of my story. I was a production coordinator at that time, and I sent them clippings, and I sent a letter about myself saying I'll do anything to work on this movie. I didn't get the opportunity, but that is a perfect example of what you were asking.
Good. Way to go, Mark.
Yeah, thanks.
Nice. You
Yeah,
pulled it
thank
out.
you. Can you be with me all the time?
Mark is available for hire.
Yes, right.
You know.
Be careful what
No.
be careful
Remember
what
in
you ask
1972, you went to the store that time and got the...
But, you know, Jenny, I sit here and I talk to you. I mean, you're the first girl to play in Little League. That to me, I'd be leading with that. I'm not a girl, but I'd still be, if I did something like that, you've got to look back now, 50 years later, and just go, doggone, that's impressive.
Yeah. I like I said, I feel a lot of pride about it. It's kind of amazing. I mean, it doesn't seem like such a big deal today because girls playing Little League, of course they can do that. You know, what are you, crazy?
Because of you.
But
Because of you, yeah.
Yeah, it was a different world back then, though, for sure.
As an adult, Mark mentioned this, you picked another male-dominated field. A visual effects producer for films. You may have heard some of the films that Jenny worked on. Batman Returns, True Lies. Actually, the list is too long to name. Our show only goes an hour, so. But Apollo 13 and one of my faves, I think, Seabiscuit. Loved Seabiscuit. Mm-hmm. So did your journey as a Little Leaguer help you in any way to be so successful in another male-centric field?
Absolutely. And I mean, I think that sports is great for all kids. You know, it builds confidence, and it in something like baseball, you learn to be part of a team. And for me, it taught me that because somebody's telling you no, that doesn't necessarily have to be the end of it, you know, and there was opportunity for me to speak up, to ask for change, to fight for change, if situations didn't seem fair or right.
I mean, if you look at the...
So yes, short answer is yes.
If you look at the movie industry now, women have such a more say in what's going on. There are production companies that are run now by actresses. They creating projects so that women have more of a say. How proud are you to see that?
That makes me very happy, and I think that we'll all benefit from it. Moviegoers, people who work in the industry across the board. I think it will only raise the tide so that all boats float higher. But yeah, I'm very happy to see that. There were a few different challenges that I had throughout my career. Being a woman was one of them, and I think that at the end of the day, I could turn stereotypes around and have people see things in a way that they didn't expect that they could see them in, and actually end up feeling good about themselves. Like, hey, look at me. I have this woman here who's doing these things for me, and it's fantastic. And aren't I open-minded and fantastic too?
Right. Hey, Jenny, real quick, has Little League embraced you in the last few years, and if so, how?
No, they haven't. And I reached out to them several years ago, a couple decades ago, maybe, and was trying to piece together my story too. It was a little bit foggy, and I was young, and I have a whole scrapbook of clippings and whatnot that my mother had enough foresight to save for me. But I ended up sending them a lot of memorabilia that I had, a poster of my old mitt, and a few other things. And I've actually never heard from them. I've never been to the museum. I had that one interaction, and I don't really know what their girls section is like there, but what they have in their Little League museum about girls and how girls got in. But it certainly wasn't a source of pride for them when it happened, and that I've heard or seen since. Not that I'm close to them or what they talk about, but it doesn't seem like something they focus a lot on. Maybe you guys know different.
No, that's shocking to me.
Yeah, it is.
So we do a little segment here called 2020. It's a trivia segment. I'm going to ask you a
trivia. Call it 50-50.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, God, no.
Yeah, no, I'm calling it 2020, damn you.
Yeah.
No, it's called 50-50.
Strike three.
Thank you for reminding me. Yeah. Anyway, I give you a 50% chance to get a trivia question right from 50 years ago. All right?
Don't do sports questions.
Well, it's a yes or a no, so you got a 50-50.
Okay.
And as I tell all our guests, if you get it right, you get nothing.
Yeah.
So,
There's no pressure.
So there's no pressure.
Yeah.
My admiration you get. All right, true or false? Lanny Moss became the first female general manager of professional men's baseball team in 1974.
False.
It is true.
Oh,
Darn it.
Lanny
I
Moss.
I thought that was a
Wow.
much more recent event.
Lanny Moss was named general manager of the Portland Mavericks, which was an independent baseball team in the Northwest.
Oh, okay, that's a trick question.
Yeah.
That is true. But
That's what he
but
does.
I'll give you a chance to make amends here, okay? Here's another trivia off of that. True or false? The person that owned the Portland Mavericks that made the hire was Kurt Russell, actor Kurt Russell's dad.
It's so outlandish, it must be true.
It is true. Bing Russell owned
Okay.
the Portland and did make that hire. In fact,
Wow,
Kurt
that's amazing.
played a little bit at that team after his minor league career was over.
there's a great
Oh, that's
there's a
amazing.
great documentary.
That's good stuff.
There's a
Yeah.
great
Yeah.
documentary on that team on one of the streaming services. I don't remember, but yeah, you'll get a
The
kick
batting.
out of it.
What is it? The
The Bad
Bastards?
Boys
That's-
of Portland, or
Yeah,
the
yeah.
Bastards. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's it.
Oh, interesting.
Hey, you were a pioneer at the age of 9, and that continued for the duration of your life. Glass ceilings are meant to be broken with you, Jenny. So thank you so much for coming on the Past Our Prime podcast and sharing your story with us. We really appreciate you giving us your time.
And I really appreciate your interest, guys. It was a lot of fun talking about it.
Say hi to Gypsy.
Yeah, sure.
Yes.
Oh, we
yes.
will. All right.
Be well.
You guys take care.
Thank
now.
you.
Jenny.
I'll see you. Talk to you soon.
Okay,
Bye.
bye-bye.
Thank you, Jenny. I want my daughter to be just like her.
Right?
Yeah. Oh, well,
You know?
5 years old. If she can be half that person.
Well,
that's
not
amazing.
just that, like she
Just
said.
awesome.
I mean, kids are so taught that,
Yes.
the answer's
Yes.
no.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm done. There's very few
She
young
didn't
kids
take
that are
no.
like, no.
That's what I'm saying.
I mean, that's not. It's one thing if it's like, kids know, hey, don't jump off the roof.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
they know.
Yeah.
Right.
But when there's like a thing that's like, they're like, that's not fair. I'm not
And-
gonna.
and
gonna
she-
And
take
to write a
that.
letter to the president
But
like
she was
that.
10
That's
years.
just,
She was 10 years old. She wasn't 18. She was
No.
10. At 10 years old, come on. Most kids are still, dinking around all the time. She went home, was upset enough to get in front of a pen and paper, not a
Right.
computer,
Yeah.
and handwrite a letter.
Yeah.
That is
And
And she knew she was
man.
as good, if not better, than a lot of the
Yes.
boys. So
Right.
why
Yes.
shouldn't she play?
Yes.
I mean, they batted her
Man.
cleanup.
And to think that you kind of get the feeling, I don't think she still fully understands the impact.
No,
Right.
she
So I'm
has.
saying,
She's so
you
humble.
were the number one, the first woman
First.
ever to play. To me, that'd be my lead.
Right.
Bill Mahoney
Right.
first man on the moon. Bill Mahoney first got hit home run. I mean, it wouldn't be just
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. Good
Yeah.
stuff. Great. Thank you, Jenny. The defection of Dandy Dawn. Moving on to Monday Night Football. Restless in his snappish role on the Monday Night Freak Show, Meredith has changed networks and hopes to make another entrance under a new billing that calls for Less Bile by Edwin Shrake. I was telling Mark before we started this that I don't remember Dawn as a player at all.
Neither do I.
And I only remember him on ABC in the booth. I didn't remember him with NBC, but in this article it says he leaves to go to NBC to work with Kurt Gowdy. And on our opening montage, we have a famous game. It's called the Sea of Hands game. It's Kenny Stabler throwing as he's falling to the ground to Clarence Davis, and he's in between three dolphins, and he catches it, but it's hard to tell. And you hear Gowdy say he falls, he throws, and you hear the analysts start going, he caught it. And I'm like, oh, that's Don Meredith. I finally, once I knew that he worked with Gowdy, but yeah, I don't remember that. And I do remember when he leaves Monday Night Football, later he would return.
Right.
And I remember that part, and turn out the lights, the party's
sure.
over. He was a funny guy.
So,
No.
I'm old enough. I remember Dandy Don's last year with the Cowboys in '68, and they had such an explosive offense with Bob Hayes, Lance Rensel, Don Perkins, Dan Reeves, and then he retired. He was not that old. He was in his early 30s, but he was so beat up, from football that he retired. But he was a personality, and he's goes to Monday Night Football and becomes a celebrity, and then he leaves, and they replaced him initially with Fred Williamson, who can't even make it out of the preseason.
Yeah.
He gets fired because he's so bad at it. And then Alex Karras, famous Detroit Lions, Blazing Saddles actor, gets and takes over. But you're right. He returns in 77 to ABC. But when he went over to NBC, he didn't just do sports. They involved him in a lot of programming. For instance, there was a show called Police Story.
That's it.
And it was on about 4 years, and it was an anthology show where each week there'd be a different set of police officers. They'd follow some kind of police case.
I like that show.
And he had a recurring role with Tony LoBianco. They were partners, and they did 5 or 6 episodes together, sprinkled around. And they had a great chemistry. And I remember Don Meredith playing a bad guy in an episode of McCloud, where he was this karate expert, And then, he's, beating up everybody and starts beating up Dennis Weaver. But of course, Dennis is the star and ends up, beating Don. But he had this career, this variety of career. He was a true personality.
Yeah, he was. He had a lot of charisma. And that worked well in that 3-man booth. You had the straight guy Gifford. You had Howard Cosell. And Meredith was the funny guy. But in 73, his banter between him and Cosell started to become a bit more harsh, a little more biting. And he said, I started being that way at the beginning of the season, cooled it when I realized what I was doing, and then got worse than ever at the end. I don't know why I did that. I like Howard. I really do. I mean, he's very weird, but I respect him. I think it was pure frustration on my part. I wasn't satisfied with myself, so I took it out on Howard. And Cosell noticed and was pretty cool about it. Said he was just having a tough time, and so the booth was not going well. He was basically down on football. He said he was bored with football, and it's hard to be in that role, especially the Monday night role, you're kind of a cheerleader. I know you have to, as Howard would say, tell it like it is, but you gotta like football. What are you doing there?
To me, this thing that got me is that I didn't know he was so unhappy. I didn't know he left. I always thought when I watched it when I was younger, I thought these guys love being here because that Monday night gig is now it's everyone wants that. Every player, everyone wants it. I didn't realize that he wanted out that badly.
My memory of Don Meredith, and I think I shared this on the podcast before, I'm not sure, but his very first year of Monday Night Football, 1970, there was a home game. Cowboys were hosting the St. Louis Cardinals. And the Cardinals won the game 38-0. Just blew the Cowboys out. And Don couldn't do his jokes, couldn't do anything. He even apologized to the audience. Said, I'm sorry, but I played with a lot of these guys, and it just hurts me to see them get embarrassed like this.
I remember, I'm pretty sure it was Meredith, but the Raiders, I think it was the Raiders and Oilers, and the Raiders were killing them. And there's a guy like in the top of the Astrodome, and they come from this zoom shot, and they just keep going closer and closer and closer. And right as they get up on top of him, he flips the bird to the camera, and Meredith goes, "Yep, he's number one."
You guys read that part where he talks about the Cleveland Browns receiver Fair Hooker? He turns it into a double entendre, saying fair hooker. Well, I haven't met one yet. If they can say those things on the air, But Mark, I'm surprised you didn't say about the North Dallas 40, that they said the character of, it says, a fictional account of life in the NFL during
Mac
the 60s.
Davis's character?
Yes, featuring quarterback Seth Maxwell, a character widely believed to be based on Meredith.
Oh, I believe it. Pete Gent, right?
Yeah, that's right. He didn't just retire to like New Mexico, and then
he did, and he passed away.
He was a painter.
Ago.
Yeah, he was a painter. Yeah.
And I thought it was neat in the story that talked about how a kid next door would pester him to throw the football around, right? And I know if I had an NFL quarterback living next door, Mr. Meredith, Mr. Meredith, Mr. Meredith, leave me alone.
There was an old show where King of Queens, where Lou Ferrigno moves next door, and the father, the Jerry Stiller's always going over with scripts in one episode, like, oh yeah, just take this. He's like, leave me alone.
In the people section, this is a good one. This is in Pittsburgh, California. A guy by the name of Frank Lombardo.
By the way, when did it move from Pennsylvania?
Right? Shot a 154 in the first round of golf he ever played. But get this, on his first hole, a hole in one.
Damn, he must have sucked the rest of
the first shot, literally, if that's the first shot you ever take, you should have just thrown the club up and
Yes.
been like, I'm out.
Hall of Fame. No one's
Right?
had a better score
And then
than me.
shoots a 153 on his next 17 holes. That's an average of a 9 each time. So, but yeah, Frank Lombardo. And then what about Pedro Wolfmiller? Did you guys see what he did?
Just for the name.
He's a determined golfer. While playing a recent round, his big toe began to hurt. He completed the 18 holes before removing his shoe to find the source of the pain. A discarded razor blade had penetrated the sole. 13 stitches were needed to close the wound, but he did finish the round.
How do you not know that?
Oh, my toe hurts.
Oh, for the
Gosh, my toe's
that's
hurting.
a razor in you, man. That's like a
That's-
knife in you.
My toe
Why is
is
that hurt?
really hurting.
You know,
yeah,
that-
because you're cutting it off.
This isn't a similar story. This is a disgusting story, but a similar story. I remember my fraternity. I was like the last month, I had these bunk beds, and I'm going, God, what reeks here? Something reeks. And I can't figure out what it was. But instead of investigating what's wrong, like you take your shoe off to see if something's in there, I just let it go by. So the month ends, I'm moving out. I finally start taking like the bed apart, and I take the blanket out, and there's this apple stuck to the blanket, just rotten to the core. Just disgusting. But again, so maybe me and Pedro have the same, blind spot.
Looking for a place to play early season baseball. Not a big article, but they are talking about the Pirates, picked by many to win the NL East, had started the season 0-6. They did end up winning the division, but not a good start for them. Meanwhile, in Milwaukee, after 4 games, their rookie shortstop was hitless before he finally got his first hit in the 5th game. He would go on to get 3,141 more hits in his career. The next night, he hit a home run to win the game in the 9th inning, and the reporters came into the locker room looking for him. The players pointed them towards a 12-year-old clubhouse boy. Considering Robin Yount was only 18 at the time, there wasn't much of a difference. So, final twist of the drama. This is a look back at Hank's record-setting night by George Plimpton. I thought this was a really fun article because it kind of looks at not just Hank, but the other people that factored into that night or that whole week going into it. Starting with home run number 710, they started stamping the balls with these invisible stamps so that when the ball was hit into the stands, if it was hit into the stands, they would be able to identify it. So that's just those kind of like neat things, someone come up and say, hey, I've got 714. And they're like, no, you don't, pal.
That would work out well nowadays if they did that.
And there's a great picture in the article of our previous guest, Tom House, like celebrating with the ball.
That's a great shot. Yeah, I agree.
I love this. Al Downing, as we mentioned, was the one who gave up the home run. The pitcher opposing Aaron in Atlanta on the last day of the 1973 season was Houston Astro left-hander Dave Roberts, not the Dave Roberts of the Dodgers. Before the game, he sat in front of his locker looking crestfallen. What I should be doing is concentrating on my 17th victory of the year, he said. But I've been thinking about him. I thought about him all last night. He was just deposited there in my mind. And what really got me was I knew he wasn't thinking about me at all.
No.
I wished I'd known his home telephone number just so I could call him every 20 minutes and be like, hey, how's it going, Hank? Most guys didn't want to be the guy to give up the home run.
Yep.
I don't know how I would feel about that.
You're always part of history.
You
no
are.
matter where you go.
I guess in a way it proved out to be. We all say about Al Downing this, Al Downing that.
Yeah.
Long career, good guy. He is known primarily as the guy who gave up Hank
That's
Aaron's.
right.
And like I told you, I worked with Al Downing, super nice guy at KBC Radio, and I never ever asked him about the Aaron thing because I just thought that's a personal thing.
He might have killed you.
He said,
No,
if
he was too nice
if
to
I
me.
throw number 715, I'm not going to run and hide. There's no disgrace in that. On the other hand, I'm not going to run to the plate to congratulate him. It's a big home run for him, for the game, for the country, but not for me.
One thing I took sort of off that a little bit is that Aaron owned the Dodgers, not just Downing. See, he had 17 home runs off Drysdale, Claude Osteen, 13 home runs off him, and then Ron Paranowski. Aaron was 13 for 16.
I
guess.
know, 13 for 16.
Eight. What is that? 812 average.
Yeah.
I mean, I mean, obviously, when you hit 715, you're owning everybody.
Right.
But still, the Dodger guys, some of those guys are obviously Drysdale's a Hall of Famer. Did you guys read that thing about the similarities between Aaron and Ruth? They were both born just a day apart in February, both hitting their 714th home run at the same age, 40, and both as members of the Braves organization.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Boston Braves.
Wow.
I thought this was interesting that they basically said Hank Aaron was a guess hitter and that he almost guessed fastball all the time. So, like, if you could get him out with a curveball or a slider, he'd tip your hat. But he knew that if you were going to come in with a fastball and you made a mistake, which they made 755 of them,
Right.
that he was going to. But
Well, baseball is a guessing game because you have split second to figure out what the pitcher's going to throw.
right,
Yeah, and he had said Juan Marichal on that was the guy that he couldn't
right,
guess
because
on.
he threw so many different pitches. I thought this was weird. No one talks about this ever, but the Dodgers made 6 errors in that game, so they were a little bit nervous maybe, or just not up for the moment, because this is a World Series type team. They weren't a bad team. In
Right.
fact, the Braves were the bad team.
Right.
They were
but
terrible back in those
6
years.
errors. That's unheard
Yeah.
of. And then they talked also about Milo Hamilton, the Braves announcer, and he knew he was going to get the call. They brought in Vince Scully, was the Dodgers announcer. He got the call, but he didn't know he was going to get the call.
Mm-hmm.
They brought in NBC Sports. Joe Garagiola was doing that game. He didn't know for sure, but Milo knew he was going to be there when Hank hit the home run. He said originally that he was going to say baseball has a new home run king. It's Henry Aaron, but he was like, that's going to take all the spontaneity out of the call. So when it happened, he got caught up in it. He was pretty close. He said, it's 7:15. There's a new home run champion of all time, and it's Henry Aaron. So a great call, one that goes down in lore of baseball.
And I think it was bigger that when Bonds broke his record, didn't have the same magnitude in my mind.
No.
Because of the steroids, because of the way people were hitting home runs back then. When Aaron did it, this black person playing for a Southern baseball team breaking, a white guy's record.
Correct.
It was culturally, it was significant,
Right.
And just there was so much more than a home run that day that he hit.
Let me ask you this. This is telling. How many home runs did Barry Bonds finish his career with?
Let's say
756?
755.
No, that's what Hank finished.
756?
755.
787?
It's in the 780s, I
Yeah,
think.
okay,
But that
okay.
just goes to show you, right, that how, like, culturally, we knew Babe 714.
Yeah.
We knew Hank 755. And then with Barry, it was kind of like, there's kind of some cheating going on there. And
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, we don't pay attention.
We don't pay
Yeah.
attention. For the record, I'd never heard of this. Did you guys see at the end of the Buffalo Braves Boston Celtics playoff game? It's 3-2 Celtics. Game 6 tied at 104, and Bob McAdoo fouls JoJo White as time expires. So JoJo White goes to the free throw line. If he hits one of them, series over. He hits both of them. They had him shoot both of them, and that was it. They win the series
Wow.
with no time left. The Braves were incensed.
bet.
Filed a petition or
bet.
protest, but to no
I wonder what
avail.
the instant replay showed. They couldn't use it.
Yeah,
back
yeah.
then.
Right.
Should've
I
had
mean,
it.
I think their argument was that there was like a half a second, so it wouldn't have probably made much of a difference. For the record, or
I have a milepost,
yeah, go ahead.
and it's only personal, so there was a little blurb there no one would pay attention to. Divorced, Hale and Olga Conley.
Yeah.
They were U.S. Discus and throwers, 56 Olympics. Both were Olympic athletes. But the reason this is an interesting story to me is they both lived in Culver City, a few blocks from my cousin. And I remember, growing up, my cousin would always say to me, hey, yeah, the Conleys live over there. So I always knew that name. And I think Olga carried the flag one year. I'm trying to remember. I want to say it was for the U.S. team at one of the Olympics. She carried the flag.
Interesting.
Wow.
Well, there you have it. The April 22nd, 1974 issue of Sports Illustrated with Gary Player on the cover. Of course, our big story in this one was the battle of the sexes as the little girls took on the little league. Want to thank our guest, Jenny Fulle, for joining us and giving us her great insights into what went on with her back in the day, trying to play ball with the boys. And so thank you, Jenny. Hey, Jeremy, thanks for your help. Bill, Mark, till next week, guys. We're past our prime. See you guys.
See ya.